What's going on, everybody? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to MANversations today. The purpose of MANversations is to foster meaningful dialogue on topics crucial to our community's well-being. That's right. Today, we'll be discussing spiritual health, mental health, my favorite, and physical health. We encourage you to visit our website at letshavemanversation.com and subscribe for updates. Throughout our conversations, we welcome your questions and comments. We kindly ask that we all respect each other's opinions as we strive to support and improve our community's overall well-being. All right. Now, let's get into it. Let me introduce our esteemed panelists. First, we have Pastor Terrence Merle. Pastor Terrence Merle, step up to the podium for a minute, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. I do appreciate it. Hello, everybody. I am Terrence Merle, married, father of three. I'm a retired Army colonel after 30 years of military service. I pastor a church, Victory Church in Sumter, South Carolina, the best church in the region. And I came out of retirement recently to teach junior RTC at a local high school in Columbia. And I count it a joy to be here on tonight. So thank you to my good friend, Mr. Jason Mahoney, for inviting me to be a part of such an esteemed and distinguished panel with such important and essential topics for what I would call comprehensive health. I'll talk a little bit later when it's my turn, but I'm going to be speaking about spiritual health.
All right, Pastor, thank you. We might need some prayer before this all is said and done.
I got you.
And another esteemed guest, Mr. Anthony Corbin. Mr. Anthony Corbin.
Good evening. It's an honor to be a part of this panel. I am Mr. Anthony Corman, a licensed clinical associate in the mental health field. I specialize in ADHD, and it's an honor to be a part of this panel and discussing a conversation about our culture, particularly on the challenges of mental health.
All right, man. Mr. Corbin, an evil social worker. He's a Black professional. We love it. We love it here. And pulling up the rear, we have Dr. Arnold McClendon. What's going on, Doc?
Good evening. As Dr. Bush mentioned, my name is Arnold McClendon, and I am a primary care provider in primary care here right outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. And I have a experience in men's health, managing hypertension, diabetes, thyroid issues, you name it, the whole gamut of chronic care conditions that we often see in primary care. I am married of 27 years, have two beautiful daughters, ages 24 and 22. My baby girl just graduated from college, so we're very proud of her. Look forward to talking to y'all today about whatever healthcare topics you may want to discuss.
All right. Thank you, Doc. Now, let's jump into it. Again, we have a wonderful discussion planned on this evening. Mr. Corman, step front to the center to the congregation. Let's have this discussion.
I like that.
Let's have it.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Corbin, in the green room, we talked about your familiarity with the topic of ADHD. So I got to jump off the top rope with this and ask, how is ADHD diagnosed?
Okay, we all know there's symptoms that come with that. Most times our kids always start out in their home. The parents notice these. Sometimes it seems like typical energetic, a lot of energy with boys. Typically boys are energetic, highly energetic. But over time, this energy seems to not dissipate. It can't sit still a lot of times. And you usually see this before the age of 5, but most of the symptoms are mostly manifested by the time these kids, the children start school. Mm-hmm. And so not only will these symptoms be seen, like the impulsivity, the hyperactivity, the lack of focus and attentiveness in being home, but it'll also be manifested within the school environment. And that's mostly where you'll see the majority of those symptoms. So you get a report not only from home, but also from school, because the children are required of a more focus. They have to require more focus during this time. So the concentration is lacking, the attentiveness, behaviors start to manifest, and that's when we begin to see, okay, there's something here that's not adding up. So most of the time when kids are at the school age, they're able to have some type of focus, able to concentrate, and not a lot of fidgeting going on. But those are having those symptoms of ADHD, you'll see a lot of inattentiveness and fidgeting, can't sit still, and that could be a correlate of diagnosis with their symptoms. What I'm meaning is they just don't, they're worried and concerned about what others are saying about them. They're dealing with low self-esteem, environmental factors at home, environmental factors at school.
Mhm.
So if these the key is if these symptoms are impacting their daily function, that's the key. And it has to be a time span, like not just one week, over months, over years.
Mhm.
So you should see these symptoms consistently over a period of time.
Mm.
You know, that's when, like, and you can actually start. Most of the time, we'll tell the parents to kind of start with their pediatrician, kind of get an overall, like, an evaluation, and so we'll take evaluation from that, and we'll bring it over to the mental health, and we kind of put that together. We kind of look at some symptoms, make some observation, and a lot of times I'll see the observation, I'll see the manifestation of those symptoms on the day that the children are brought into the office.
Mm.
They're all the energy there. They can't looking all over the place. See, and the parents try to tell the kids to sit down, sit down. I said, no, I need to see this. I need to observe this. So those are the things I kind of observe when I see the kid not able to focus, very talkative, very energetic, very impulsive, crossing boundaries. Uh,
Mm.
a lot of those symptoms I begin to see even in a community setting. So that's another setting. So when they're coming into the clinic, that's another setting. So we have the home setting, the school setting, and then the community setting. All right.
Mr. Corbin, now let me ask you this. In the treatment of ADHD, is medication essential? Is it necessary all the time?
Now, let me say this.
Okay.
We look at medication as a tool.
Okay.
Okay. Now, sometimes parents will get discouraged, and they'll get someone will advise them to administer medication first. All right. And so sometimes the parents are hesitant about that, and they don't want to put their kids on medication. So then we discuss, okay, let's give them some tools first. So I believe it's necessary first to give kids tools, strategies, and then the parents make the decision to whether they want to have their children on medication, because medication are like a tool, because it works the chemical balance within the brain of the child, because they're dealing with it. And we always tell the parents that the kids are, ADHD is not the child, but these are symptoms. They're born with these diagnoses. They're born with the ADHD. So it is a neural diagnosis with the brain, with the prefrontal cortex of the brain. So this is the prefrontal cortex, is where we deal with executive function, time management, self-control, judgment. Like, we as adults, we're able to do that. So we teach and provide psychoeducation to our parents and advise them that the children's brains are still developing. They're still developing. So they can't help but be off independent and challenged with ADHD. Yes, so we teach them to give them skills. They're challenged with a lot of emotional regulation, dysregulation. So we help them to manage. We give them tools and strategies to help them. We let them know that it's not an overnight thing, and it's about how parents respond. We have to help the parents, give them skills and tools, because a lot of times parents will respond out of emotion. They get stressed, and because the children can't sit down, stay still. You're not listening. They think they're not listening, but the mind of a child with ADHD is here. It's all over the place there. So there are a lot of dysregulation going on. So the prefrontal cortex is like the brain center, the control center of the brain. So we have to understand, okay, your child can't help but display these symptoms because of the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. So what we notice is as we work and give them the skills, teach them emotional regulation, teaching them mindfulness skills, and teaching the deep breathing techniques, and give them strategies, and help the parents to understand how to respond. But a lot of it is dealing with the relationship between that child and that parent.
Mm.
Because if they act out emotions, they're gonna set that child down.
There you go.
So the parents have to be emotional.
Yeah.
They're actually manifesting how to respond.
Yes,
The
sir.
parent is.
Yes,
so
sir.
if they don't, so in education is going to be the key. So a lot of times parents don't understand. They think my kid, something's wrong with him. Why can't he sit down? Why can't he behave like other? Why can't he behave like little Johnny?
Yes,
He ain't
sir.
little Johnny. He's John. So he's Michael. So once they understand this is something they're born with, it doesn't go away, but it can be managed.
Mm-hmm.
And how they respond, and that's when we can do something to help them to be a better at managing those symptoms. You know, even in going into adulthood. Because personally, even myself, that's what I had to do. So we give them things that help them. We focus. I focus on those strengths of that child, because every child that's dealing with ADHD, they have a strength.
Yes,
so
sir.
we tell them, okay, you're not ADHD. You're not defined by ADHD. That's just a symptom, but you have a superpower. And I'm gonna teach you how to tap into that superpower, so you can be a successful kid in school, at home, and in life.
I like that, Mr. Corman, man. You just said a mouthful in there, but I've got a plethora of questions, man, that my audience has put in. Dorian Brunson as well as Georgette Perry, they have two similar questions. Is what they are, meaning the children, what they are eating has anything to do with the symptoms of ADHD, and does diet play a part in ADHD? What say you, sir?
Okay, so we get a lot of questions about that and concern with parents about eating. I would say that eating can have, now, kids with ADHD love stimulation.
Okay.
They that dopamine, that's why they love sugar.
Right.
That feel good part of the brain. So
yes, sir.
So they mostly, children with ADHD crave, they're more geared toward seeking that pleasure, that's sugar. So so the thing is trying to get things in them that are good and healthy for the child, you know. And I look at it as balance, okay? Because there are some things that have things that are in food that can impact the child's regulating emotions. We have food that have red dye in them. You understand that red dye that's in food can have impact on the child's regulating their emotions and increase those symptoms. So a lot of our foods with all these chemicals in them, and the child is already having challenges, already having a chemical imbalance themselves. So it's really trying to find, every child is different. So finding the right thing, the right balance for your child. So we can't compare every child the same. So what's good for my child is going to be different for your child. What they eat, you know, my child may not be able to eat this. Your child may not have a problem with this, you know. So I think it's finding balance and finding those food that is good and healthy that bring nutrients, give our children nutrients. They're gonna have the energy, but let it be good energy that can come from those healthy foods we eat, because they're gonna digest, metabolize those foods really quick when they're young. So I do think certain foods do have a bearing on, not saying that it gives them ADHD, but it will have an impact on whether they'll be able to regulate those symptoms, where in their surroundings, in their settings.
Gotcha. I have another question from Shania Merrill. She says, is ADHD genetic?
It is.
Wow.
Yes. So if someone in your family has had ADHD, now there are two diagnoses. There was ADD, which was the attention deficit, where you were challenged more with the attention and not the hyperactivity.
Right.
So now the DSM have combined now the attention with the hyperactivity. So you can either have one or the other, or you can have both. So it's not easy. It's not hard to actually observe if the child is having any challenge with the inattentiveness or the hyperactivity, because if it's hyperactive, they're driven more so like a motor. There's always this child, he can't sit down. He can't sit down. So what we do is just kind of now have combined the two. So it's not just you have ADD or just this symptom. So we just combine the two and call it ADHD, attention hyperactive disorder. So Did I answer the question?
Is it genetic? Yes, you just answered the question.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
yeah. So genetically, if someone in the home in the family has it,
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, your child somebody don't mean every child will have it, but 9 times one of them children will have those symptoms because it's in the blood. It's genetic. It's not
Gotcha.
like it's not a disease.
No.
It doesn't mean nothing wrong with you, nothing
Right.
wrong with the child. But what I go back to saying, there's a strength in it. There's always there's a strength in that. They may have the challenge, even myself personally, with staying seated and focused. And I'm still having challenges, but I've learned to manage that. I'm putting strategies in place to help manage those symptoms, writing things down. A lot of times we try to keep things in our mind, and with all the day-to-day that we're going through, it's hard to just try to keep everything crammed up in this brain of ours, and we forget. So you have to do things to help yourself to be better, with being organized. So it's being intentional. When you're intentional about improving those symptoms, you can do it. But again, yes, it's definitely, it is genetic, because I have the symptoms, but they've been more manageable now, becoming an adult, So even working on sitting still, it used to be really hard for me. So I think God was working with me, knowing that I was going to be in this profession. I had to be able to sit down and be able to talk with people and listen, and give counsel and listen and provide information. So I think with the strategies that God will give you strategies and how to, because every child is different and unique in their own. Yeah.
So, Mr. Corbin, I got 2 more questions because I move to our next segment. And one is by Andre Thompson. It says, what happens when kids go undiagnosed?
All right. So when they go undiagnosed, with ADHD?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So for a long time, like if kids go undiagnosed, it can be frustrating for the child and for the parents, within itself. I know this personally, because you think you try to fit in, and you wonder what you ask what's wrong with you, or why you can't do certain things, or why you're different, which you are different, but it's a good kind of difference. But a lot of times, if you go undiagnosed in early, and you continue to go undiagnosed as into your child, your youth, like for as middle school, it becomes frustrating because you haven't obtained the tools and the education that you need to be successful with this diagnosis, with this ADHD, because you think something wrong with you. Why you can't you sit still? Why you can't make the grades? Like, nobody's taught you. No one has helped you to understand that this ADHD or is just symptoms and not you, that you're behaving this way because of your prefrontal cortex, and that there are strategies that you can use to help manage this, that you can be successful, because there are professionals, famous people that have been diagnosed with ADHD and have gone on to be successful movie stars, actors, that I didn't even know, like Michael Phelps, the swimmer in the Olympics. And I think there's some other actors that we would never have known had they not disclosed this and shared with us that they were dealing with these. But they had, because they went on diagnosis at an early age, that they didn't find out till later on that this what it was, So they ran into a lot of barriers and challenges and things as the adults, even as myself. So the earlier, the better. Better, really, because you have tools and strategy. You'll be educated, and you'll have a more understanding of awareness of why you behave the way you do.
And my last question to you, Mr. Corbin, my very last question is, I have a question from Dr. Omika McNeil, which is, are there preventative measures, as well as Georgette Perry. She has a second follow-up question was, studies being performed on prenatal vitamins that are prescribed to pregnant women. Is there a correlation? Are there preventative measures? Are there things that we're doing beforehand that can help curtail a diagnosis of ADHD potentially?
Well, if you, like somebody asked about genetics, if it's genetics, there's it's just genetic, and just the thing is diagnosing early, because sometimes you don't know if you have it as a child, and if you go on diagnosis and you go into adulthood with this and don't find out till later, you've already had a child. So now you've got ADHD symptoms, and you have your children with this twisted ADHD diagnosis or the symptoms of it. So like, I think just preventive is basically getting educated and getting diagnosed early and getting the information so you're understanding what is happening, why you behaving the way your child's behaving, why they have these symptoms. I don't think you can, like, if something's genetic, it's genetic. That means you're born with it. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. There's no operation other than getting the knowledge and getting the skills that you need to manage. It's like if they say like someone gets cancer, okay, what do they do now? You get cancer, so what do I do? Or somebody born without arms or legs, what do they do now? Do they give up? Can they prevent themselves? People that are born with certain deformities, can they do anything about it? So what they do, it's a mindset now. Now it's a mindset. What do I do with this challenge? What do I do with the ADHD? Now I get educated on what can I do if I'm born without legs or without arms? How do I overcome these deficits? You know, so it's not so much of what we can prevent about how do we overcome it, getting educated, you know, and changing that mindset, that mindset about those symptoms and challenges we have, instead of why do I have this? Why am I behaving this way? Okay, so we look at it from a different standpoint. What can I do with this? What makes me different? Focus on those strengths. You know, the person-centered part of what I do is focus on those strengths, person-centered, strength-based approach, and say the ADHD, they don't even focus on that anymore. So more, if you look at the challenges of how you overcome those challenges and what can make you successful going forward, you know, that's what's going to make the person the best person they can be dealing with these ADHD symptoms.
I love it. I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, we love your questions that keep coming in, but we got to get to our next segment. We're going to loop back around in the end, though. Mr. Coleman, I appreciate you, sir. Thank you for your service.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, we talked about the mental health. Now let's get to the physical health. Dr. McClendon, how you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, Dr. Bush.
Man, Dr. McClendon, I want to jump right into this. We are in a post-COVID world right now, where we've had all the daily bulletins by Dr. Fauci, and we've had the aftermath of all the stuff that went on. What are you seeing from your viewpoint when it comes to men post-COVID?
Working in primary care, we haven't seen a lot of COVID cases recently, to be honest with you. We've actually seen a rise in RSV in the community, which normally you see in children, but the COVID cases really have decreased. And I think that's the reason behind that is because of the more blanketed immunization that we have been, patients been receiving.
Now, doctor, what is RSV for my audience that don't know? Because I don't know what it is.
It stands for respiratory syncytial virus, which is a virus that causes a lot of coughing. There's no treatment for it, just supportive measures. You usually see it in children, but we're starting to see it in adults in the community now.
Gotcha. So I think one question that some of my audience would like to ask is it still essential for us to go get vaccines right now?
You can get any COVID vaccine from the local pharmacy. You can also get a RSV vaccine if you are 65 and older, and if you are a child, but they don't offer it for middle-aged adults.
Gotcha. So switching gears a little bit, we know about the hypertension, we know about high blood pressure, we know about diet. Well, first, let's start with diet. Atkins diet, keto diet, what does it all mean for Black men in this day and age, sir? I mean, is there a difference, or how do we find out what actually works for us?
I'm not a big fan of keto and Atkins because those are high protein diets, in which a lot of protein can end up damaging your kidneys. So I'm not a big fan of those. What I talk to my patients a lot about is the pescatarian diet. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but pescatarian is more similar to the Mediterranean diet, where you eat more fish. That's really the main protein that you eat, and you don't eat a lot of red meat, if any at all, or chicken, but more so just fish. So I am a big fan of the pescatarian diet.
Gotcha. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you guys caught that, but he says lots of protein can affect your kidneys. And so one way we thinking about it is just alcoholism and how that can play a huge impacting role, but a steak or two or so might not do you so well.
No. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So, I mean, we're talking about men's health, anything along those lines, and we're talking about the things that are you seeing more men come in for treatment for their yearly checkups or anything like that? I mean, are they receiving the message or is it just still waning?
I think a lot of men shy away from seeing their primary care providers because they are afraid of the prostate exam. They hear horror stories about that.
Okay.
So they tend to stay away because of the stories they have heard about that. But I wish they wouldn't, because prostate cancer really affects African American men more so than other male counterparts. About 1 in 4 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer throughout their lifetime. So, and it's more prevalent, like I said, in African American males. So it's really important that we get our screenings, and screenings start at 40 years of age for prostate cancer.
Now, is prostate cancer something that's genetic, or I mean, is it something that are there factors that a person's diet can lead to contributing to that prostate cancer?
It's genetic, and diet can also play a factor in it too as well. So if if your father had prostate cancer, or you had a first degree relative like an uncle, or you are more likely to have prostate cancer yourself. So yes, again, those screenings are really, really important. And again, your diet, not eating a lot of greasy foods and high saturated fats like red meat can increase those risks too as well.
Man, Doc, you're going to have us being vegetarians, man, by the end of the show right now when it comes to that. He just cut out greasy foods, and he cut out wing night, lemon pepper, then he cut out, man, ribeyes. So, I mean, at times, what can we eat, Doc?
Well, hypertension is another big one that runs really prevalent in African-American males. And I talk a lot about the DASH diet for those particular patients. And DASH is an acronym that stands for Dietary Approaches to Stopping High Blood Pressure or Hypertension. So it's all about eating more fresh fruits and vegetables and your lean meats like fish, chicken, and turkey, and avoiding your fried and fatty foods, and exercise. Getting, at least the current guidelines recommend we all get 150 minutes of cardio exercise a week. And I find it easy to tell patients to do 30 minutes of cardio 5 days a week to get that 150 minutes in.
Okay. All right. I like that. 30 minutes a day, man. We'll keep the doc away. Well, we'll see about that one. All right. What I have a question from David Shepard. I hope I said his name right. He says, what are some of the tips for sticking with a diet and habit formation?
I think having an accountability partner really helps a lot. I myself have an accountability partner to keep me on track with my diet and my exercise. So that really, really helps patients be successful in maintaining those healthy habits.
That's awesome. Dorian Brunson, always coming with the questions. You mentioned the dreaded prostate exam that happens at the age of 40, but Dorian added another wrinkle to it. They said at the age of 40 or 50, do you recommend a colonoscopy? What's the age that primarily people take that at?
So for colon cancer screening, it starts at 45.
Okay.
But if my patient has a first degree relative with colon cancer, I start my screening at 40. So it really just depends on the provider that you see and how they practice. So for me and my patients, if you had a family history of it, I start my screens at 40. But insurance, most of the time, will not pay for a colonoscopy unless you're 45.
Now, I know, sticking with that comment right there, you said relative. Now, does it matter if the relative is on your mother's side or your father's side? I mean, does that play a role in any of this?
For me, it does not matter. No, if it could be mother's side or father's side, if someone in your family history has that history of colon cancer, I'll start my screening at age 40.
Gotcha. Joy Lawson made a comment. She said, I count macros, and now I'm wondering, and I'm eating too much protein. I was told to eat the number of grams equal to my current weight. Doc, I see you smiling to some extent. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't know a lot about counting macros, so I always refer my patients to the nutritionist in the office to help with that. But you are right about eating your weight, and grams of protein, and I would not exceed that.
Got you. Jerry Owens made a interesting comment. It said multivitamin recommendation for a 40-year-old male. And first of all, I mean, are multivitamins, do they work? I mean, because sometimes some people say, well, you shouldn't eat them before breakfast or you should eat them after breakfast. There's a lot of stuff that's on the internet that sometimes is confusing. So what would you say about multivitamin recommendations?
I am a big fan of multivitamins, but you should eat first and then take them, because if you don't, then your body, you will just pee them back out. You actually when you urinate, you'll see your urine is really like yellow in color.
Yeah.
So you should always eat first before you take your multivitamin. But I am a big proponent of multivitamins.
Gotcha. Laquita Corbin, she said, is there any headway on getting insurances to allow testing early if it runs in your family?
Unfortunately, there is not, Laquita. When you drive through, most big cities, the skyscrapers that you see are big pharma and insurance companies. So they really control a lot here in this company, and with their political action committees and whatnot. So there's no way around it, unfortunately.
Is there anything that us laymen can do to potentially, advocate or to voice, for the need of early testing in that space?
Email your congressman, send letters and things of that nature. And just get your provider too to fight for you and advocate for you. If you have those concerns. Sometimes I'm going to tell a little secret. I hope no one's from my job is listening to this, but sometimes I'll make a little thing up, like the patient may have blood in their stool, something like that, to get it covered.
Gotcha. I see that. Now, going back to when we talked about multivitamins, I know that sometimes I've seen multivitamins at Walmart. I've seen multivitamins at the dollar store. I've seen multivitamins at GNC, all these different places. Is there one store better than the other?
No, there isn't. But there are two discount websites that I direct a lot of my patients to. One is called Swansons.com, SWANSONS.com, and the other one is Puritan's Pride. You can go to those two websites and get a lot of vitamins off those websites for discount prices.
Dorian Brunson, she asked, what's your thoughts on taking probiotics? Now, first and foremost, what is a probiotic?
A probiotic is healthy bacteria for your gut to help digest food. And I think everyone should take a probiotic. Everyone. It just helps your body overall digest food more efficiently and decrease gas and abdominal bloating.
Where do you find probiotics at?
Any drugstore.
Okay. All right. Definitely. So you said there are bacteria. They align inside your gut, and it helps with, to digestion. It creates gas and everything along those lines, or?
Yeah, it helps to decrease gas and abdominal bloating.
Gotcha.
Does digest food more efficiently and keeps you regular.
It's one of the things, because it's funny, because Ken McGowan, he had the question that was on my mind. Well, if I got the probiotics and I got the fiber, man, that's going to make for an interesting evening, is it not?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
Fiber is important too as well. It helps make your stool soft and prevent you from straining while having bowel movements, therefore preventing hemorrhoids. So there are two different things, the fiber and the probiotic, and they work different ways.
Is it at any point that we can be taking too much of these supplements with the probiotics, the fibers, the multivitamins, and anything along those lines?
No, because when in regards to the multivitamin, you are going to pee some of it out, so you won't get too much. So I wouldn't worry about that. Now, the only vitamins that you can get too much of are your vitamins A, D, E, and K. Those are your only fat-soluble vitamins that you can get too much of.
You said A, E, D, and K are the ones
A, D, E, and K. A, D, E.
A, D, E, and K. A, K. Okay. We can get too much of those.
I got a call. I'm on call tonight. I'll be right back.
Most definitely. I appreciate you. Breaking news. So, moving from physical health, let's move to our spiritual health. Pastor Terrence Merrill, please.
Good evening. Listen, so he just got a call because he's a medical doctor. I'm a pastor, so I'm hoping nobody calls me. So we'll see how it goes.
Hey, like I said, man, somebody might call you to need prayer, man. Need laying their hands on.
I'm ready. I'm ready. But listen, before you launch with a question, can I go first? Because I think I need to do a disclaimer first.
Okay, sir.
Because I think we've talked a lot in great detail about physical health and about mental health. I just need to, as a pastor, explain what I'm going to mean when I address spiritual health. Because by spiritual, I don't mean Pilates. I don't mean meditation and chants. I don't mean burning sage, candles, or incense. I'm talking specifically man's connection with God.
Okay.
God is a spirit, and the Bible says that God made us in His image at this likeness. So man is also a spirit. So we are a spirit. We have a soul, and we live in a body. And so what's so phenomenal about this is that this panel and the topics address all three portions of the man's makeup. So we already talked about the mental, that's the soul. The last gentleman talked about the physical, that's the body. And then the third component that I think really wraps it all and brings it together is the spiritual. Man is a spirit. So I just needed to make that disclaimer so that all of my answers and all of my comments will launch from that premise. Because I come from a Christian view whereby total, or what I call comprehensive care, is really based on the fact that you have a spiritual connection with God. So then you can go with your first question, but I need to make sure I let everybody know that I'm not talking about burning any type of incense or open mic at a bar. That's not spiritual to me.
Wait a minute. I missed that one. An open mic in a bar, that could be spiritual? Wow. Well, I know at a bar you can drink spirits, but I mean, I didn't notice that it can be spiritual in a sense.
Just want to be clear on what I mean by spiritual. But go ahead, sir. What do you have a question for me? Because I can go on about the spiritual health of man.
Well, I mean, I wanted to take the idea because there's been a lot of conversation as of late of men leaving the church, anything along those lines. You know, and I've known that from my understanding, the church is perceived as a hospital, and it's where you go to get help or you get aid in the time of need for certain situations. But for some reason, they're saying that a lot of men are leaving that not organization, but they're leaving. What are your thoughts on that conversation, sir?
Well, I mean, I've heard bits and pieces of that conversation, but you know, there are times that type of talk is not healthy.
Okay.
I don't have any empirical data that suggests the numbers are on the decline. I've been in church all my life, and so what I can say is that men, as far as I'm concerned, they look at health differently, and so there's an issue with spirituality and masculinity.
Okay.
So this panel has been so comprehensive. Men think about health, you know, being something that you accomplish in the gym. And then they say, well, you don't make abs in the gym, you make abs in the kitchen. Right. And so men look at health in terms of, you know, what you can see in the mirror, things that are more factual. But spirituality is based in faith, not necessarily based in being at or in church. So, you know, if I were to contribute to that conversation to extend it or expand it, it's not about whether men are in church, it's whether men have a connection with God so that you can lead your family, you can be in a position of authority as the way that the Lord set things up for the family unit. So, like I said, it's a cliche for us at our church. I don't necessarily know how many men go to my church. I don't know how many women go to my church. Gotcha. I want them to all count for something versus, you know, counting on the rolls. But I do understand, and I agree with the suggestion that there are, I don't want to call it a mass exodus or a migration away from the church, but I certainly think that men play a significant role. And if their spiritual connection with God is the way that it's supposed to be, they'll be in the right place. That makes sense to you? So
makes a lot of sense. So I want to shift gears just a little bit. When it comes to the topic of mental health, and as a mental health professional and someone that was born and raised in the church, one of the things that I've noticed within the last 10 to 15 years is we didn't see a lot of conversation when it came to mental health topics when it came to the church. Are we on the same page with that one?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When did you, but now, it's, I guess, all the rage. When did you notice a shift, Pastor Merrill, when it comes to that?
Well, I think this is I'm not sure when this discussion began, but I do know that a lot of things in the church are sort of kind of traditional. And I do know that there are some segments that just believe that if you're really going to believe God, if you're really going to be a man of faith, then seeking mental health or seeking therapy is almost like an admission that you don't believe God to be the healer.
Wow.
So Jesus is the great physician. The book of Luke is written by the man that picked to be a physician.
Right.
So my wife and I both mount the pulpit at my church regularly. And there's some things that we make a point of saying because we want to make sure that we dispel rumors and sayings and beliefs that are not biblical. We believe in Jesus and therapy.
Wow.
Okay. Listen, when people deal with the loss of a loved one, when people deal with bankruptcy, people deal with divorce, miscarriages, a lot of different tragedies in their lives, there's no guarantee that your parishioner, that your pastor is able to counsel them appropriately. So the approach that the church wants to use with the best efforts to look after people, sometimes that might fall short. I am not a trained counselor.
Okay.
I am an Army officer for 30 years. Did not include counseling. I talk a lot. I can do that very well. I'm pastoring now, but I am not a trained counselor. You know, we talk about man being spirit, soul, and body. Soul comes from the Greek word psyche, is where we get the word psychology, right? And so psychology is the study of the soul. Psychiatry is the treatment of the soul. And so I might be a pastor, but I can study the soul, emotions, will, desires, and habits, but I don't have necessarily medicinal treatment for the soul. Now, I want to make sure I'm very clear that Jesus sent his word to heal all diseases.
Yeah.
But Jesus also anoints, appoints, and certifies people to be doctors. And so if I need help and it goes beyond what my deacons or my elders are able to do, I am comfortable seeking someone to speak to process my thoughts, to deal with grief, to deal with different types of emotional issues that might expand beyond what the church has to offer. The onus is on the church to make the people feel comfortable seeking therapy. It's the church's responsibility so people are comfortable seeking that.
Well, and I think you answered that question because in my mind, it looked back to what you said in the beginning, that with some traditions, it made it that your faith wasn't big enough. You didn't believe enough, that you weren't a Christian enough to believe for your healing without going to talk to that guy who's the devil. Because now we'd ashamed and blamed that individual. And so that's very interesting. But I like your retort on that, because I think it's necessary to say that, hey, we are working in concert together. The same individual who anointed the pastor to do what he's doing is the same individual who anointed the therapist, the physician, to do what they're doing to help you as well. So
absolutely.
I want to jump back to what you said within your first conversation, because you made an interesting point about being and having a connection, having a relationship with your God, with Jesus, anything along those lines. How do men foster those relationships in a busy world as we have today? Because I know consistency sometimes is hard for a lot of us.
Well, it comes with understanding what I said up front about man being a tripartite makeup, spirit, soul, and body. And so the two that are at odds is the soul and the spirit. They're literally fighting every day for those who are Christians, who have our connection restored with God. And so what we must understand is that both the soul and the spirit have insatiable desires. They're both hungry. They're both starving. And so we see in the Bible, King David demonstrated for us the essential to draw to God. God says, if you draw nigh unto me, I will draw nigh unto you.
Right.
So since the soul is hungry and the spirit is hungry, it's like a zero-sum game. You've got to starve one and feed the other. So how do you starve the soul? There are things that you know you should not be saying. Don't say it. There are things that you know you should not be watching. Don't watch it.
Okay.
There are things that you know you should not be listening to. Don't listen to.
Right.
There are people you know you should not be associated with. And I know people like to say, yeah, but he or she is so good to me, but they're not good for you. And so the way you starve your soul is to deprive it of the things that it wants. It does not want the right things. And listen, that's not sex and movie. That's also potato chips and pork chops. So that's why it's essential to have this panel with the doctor who was on. Listen, you should not be eating that, but it is your soul that makes you want it.
Yes.
So you starve one and you feed the other. So how do you feed the spirit? Prayer, your constant connection and your communication with God, right? Prayer, meditation, praise, worship, and being connected to your faith community. It's literally a zero-sum game. So just like you go in the gym to lift weights, to develop your strengths and your muscles, you can also develop your spiritual muscles so you can be spiritually strong and spiritually healthy. But you can't be fat in the flesh. And when I say flesh, I don't mean flesh and blood. I mean the carnal, internal, soulish issues of who we are. That part of you that wants what it wants, whether it's good for you or not. You can't be fat in the flesh and also strong spiritually. It's a zero-sum game. You got to pick one. I choose the spirit. How about you?
I choose spirit as well too. You know, what I said, man, don't trip. The Lord ain't through with me yet, though.
None of us are there yet.
Right. And I think that's essential to understand is that we all are on our own personal journeys, man. Ever trying to reach that place, man, where we hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. We all are in that space of looking to move into that part. But there's so much conflicting information sometimes out there, Pastor, that I've seen, where it talks about tithing or whether it talks about, okay, let's talk about that. Because, you know, men, we love to talk about money, you know, and the lack of money. And so some people say, well, tithing is of the Old Testament. It's not of the New Testament and things along those lines. And it can, I want to say it hurts a person's personal relationship or anything along those lines, but it can have a person potentially missing out on some benefits of them walking in that or not. What would your comment be to a brother that is struggling in that area?
I would tell them that that's an age-old distraction. Why are you talking about tithing?
Okay.
We're talking about having a spiritual connection with God.
Gotcha.
And when you are connected with him, then your faith begins to grow. See, what we do is we don't really want to talk about the issue at hand. We want to enter into this red herring or this squirrel or something that's over here because that's what they are talking about. Don't worry about what they are talking about. We were born with spirits disconnected from God. That's how we were born. We can thank Adam for that. When we become Christians, when we become what some folks know as saved, that means it's almost like you plug up into a socket. Our spirits become reconnected. Our relationship is restored with God. The matter at hand is not whether you tithe or not. The issue is whether you have a connection with God. And when you have a connection with him, he will reveal things to you and you will be able to grow in your faith. Tithing is a matter of faith, not your spiritual connection or your spiritual right? So be careful not to allow the hot button topic items that's caused to divide. And then we'll end up having a whole panel talking about whether the preacher's making money, whether the church is buying the car for the money, the preacher, where does the preacher live? And we will have a whole discussion about that while the person who really needs to know about Jesus is left with his question unattended to.
That's true.
It's a distraction, sir. Connect with God. Plug in. Let's start. Plug in. And we go from there.
Awesome. Samuel Bush then chimed in on this. He said, what advantages of a man who is connected to others in the faith versus being isolated?
That's a good question because men really sort of kind of love to recuse themselves and do things on their own. You sometimes find them in the gym, not even using a spotter. Now, you know you can't lift that much weight without spotting. But men like to do things on their own. The Bible says, as iron sharpeneth iron, so the countenance of one friend sharpens the countenance of another. We are better together. And that is an issue that men deal with. But I got a message for all the men that believe that you can accomplish anything by yourself. That is, you can't get what's best for yourself by yourself. It started from the very, very beginning, whether it's a man or whether it's a woman. God gave Adam a list of things to do. He gave him the garden to dress it. He gave him his rules. He gave him his restrictions. And what he said was, it's not good that man be alone. He said he was going to create a helper. You know this story. That's Eve. Right. But when he made Eve, it wasn't to cure loneliness. He said, I will give you somebody to help you, not so you wouldn't be lonely. If you're with God, you're not lonely. That wasn't, so Eve didn't come to remedy loneliness. Eve came to render help. So I want you to just picture in your mind two people lifting up a coffee table.
Yes.
You got that picture in your mind?
I got
Do you know which one is helping?
Not necessarily.
Look like they're doing the same thing to me, don't it?
Like they're doing the same thing.
All right. So there's no need to try to accomplish anything isolated. We're just better together. That was a great question from Mr. Bush.
Definitely. I mean, and I definitely believe that, and it's evident because when we look at other cultures, we notice that the collaborative effort, we know the collaborative versus the individualistic. The collaborative efforts, when a lot of the cultures, they're able to go get things more accomplished. They have more businesses. They have more success. With even in our neighborhoods. Matter of fact, I've seen some of them. They've even started to fry chicken in our neighborhoods and things on because they work together. They have that spirit. And you're right, Pastor. When we are very individualistic or we isolate, we're left alone to our own thoughts, our own devices, which can be very dangerous. Very dangerous for our time. Pastor, I thank you for coming on. Can I have Mr. Corman, Dr. McClendon, for the last roundup on it? Oh, okay. Dr. McClendon, you through saving lives or are you handling emergencies?
Yeah, I had to send someone to the hospital. Hopefully they'll be okay.
All right. Well, for God, we'll have Pastor Merle. He'll pray for him in just a few moments. So, I mean, but I enjoyed this topic this evening. I think Pastor pointed out the different factors was mind, body, and soul that we had in this conversation this evening or so, and how a lot of those intersected. None of them are isolated from one. I mean, if you are compromised within your mind or anything along those lines, sometimes you can be compromised in your body, and there's proof research to go to show that as well too with somatic illnesses or whatnot. My thing is, how does a person become more balanced in this approach? Because for someone who has to practice this is a lot. Just like an athlete, they have a regimen, they have to be disciplined. But if they're not disciplined, then sometimes they can fall by the wayside, or maybe they'll lose their job or won't perform as well. How does a person become more disciplined in looking at these things? Anybody jump out there?
I think having a healthy balance in mind, body, spirit, and soul is the key. You have to have that balance. Don't you will be off balance. I often use the term disease is being at disease. So you have to be within balance within all those aspects to live a healthy, happy, and productive life.
Gotcha.
Well, I'll just jump back in. I wanted to defer since I just spoke for like 20 minutes straight. But the recognition that man is three beings, spirit, soul, and body, is the start of the balance. And then you've got to be able to discern, where you're lacking. You can see how you feel, look in the mirror and get an assessment with the body, also visiting the doctor. But it's just understanding that there are three separate components, and you just have to figure out where you're putting the focus. Sometimes we spend a lot of time in the gym because we're focusing on the physical aspect. So it's just a matter of just that cognizance that it's more than one of you. It's actually three.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I agree with you, Doctor. And I think like just for me, and I think it's just finding that balance, and then that's all. I think that's a ongoing journey for us all. We're all connected, the spirit, soul, and body. You can't do one. You can't have one without the other. If you put too much emphasis on one, then the other goes lacking. Okay, I might work out in the gym, but what am I doing to my spirit? All right. Then I can be too spiritual because I can be over spiritual and then neglect the body part. So it's finding that balance where and each individual is different and finding that and getting in that place. It's like I'm even myself still on that journey. I think it's just ongoing, and I think the more you focus on it, not saying that you'll be finished, but I think it gets easier, and you're doing it with the Lord. As you're doing it with God, you're seeking God and helping you and in that balance and getting those connections, relationships. I think that's where we can lay that ground for balance. Like we focus on not just one area, but if we make sure my spirit is right, my relationship with the Lord is right. Spending time with God in prayer, fellowshipping with the saints. My soul, I'm talking to the Lord. I'm getting the word, and then I'm working on my physical. I'm putting the right things in my body. I'm exercising. I think if we try to get a routine going, sometimes we can get off track, but we kind of continue to do that self-evaluation.
Okay.
Where am I now?
So I like that word, self-evaluation. Well, gentlemen, man, we're about to conclude. I've got about maybe 2 minutes left. I want to give you an opportunity for final words. I got 2 minutes. Who want to jump first?
I'll go first because listen, if you don't get the spirit thing under control, the rest of it's gonna fall apart anyway. So when you die, your body's gonna just return to the dust that it came from, right? Your mental and your emotional state, that's your soul. That won't be saved until you are redeemed with a new body. And your spirit is what will always live with the Lord if you belong to Him. So in my closing comments, I just want to say there are three of us, but just make sure that you realize they're not three equal parts. If you plug into God and you get your spiritual connection restored, He will lead and guide you, and you'll be able to discern what you need to do to take care of your body and what you need to do to take care of your emotional state. Because man is a spirit, I just wholeheartedly believe if you get God as the priority in your life and reestablish that connection, the other two, you have the capacity and the capability for them to fall into place. If the spirit is disconnected, you're gonna be out of balance. You're gonna be like a two-legged stool.
Wow. Final thoughts, gentlemen. Ms. McClendon, Dr. McClendon, Ms. Corman. I got about 45 seconds.
Well, I just like to encourage everyone listening to get your annual exams. Don't be shy about going to the provider. It's just really important, especially for Black men, to get their screenings of high blood pressure, prostate cancer, diabetes. Get your screenings. Go to the doctor at least once a year. That's my final thoughts.
Awesome. 30 seconds, Mr. Corman.
And those that are seeking therapy, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what you need. Get it. Definitely get the spiritual part. The whatever the needs that you need. Nothing's wrong. Usually, I think that sometimes it's been a challenge for our African Americans because we thought that the older culture, that's what they do. So we go see therapy. We're crazy. That's for the nuts. That's for the those out of their mind. But no, I think it's more prevalent now than ever. It's a good thing to get that mental therapy for your overall well-being for yourself. Take care of your body. Take care of your mind. Take care of your spirit.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you to our panelists and audience for your participation today. We will return on third Tuesday of next month at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with another engaging panel. I think this one was great itself. Please visit our website, letshavemanversation.com, and subscribe for future updates. Feel free to email us with topics you'd like to hear or if you're interested in becoming a panel member. We also offering sponsorship opportunities starting at $100. Just $100. That's easy. Allowing us to promote your business on our international platform. Please be on the lookout for this information. Your support helps us reach audience worldwide. We would look forward to reconnecting with you next month. Well, tonight, I mean, because I'm Dr. McClendon, I'm not going to have a steak or any fried food. I guess I'll find a sandwich. Additionally, a survey will be sent to gather your feedback, and we appreciate your participation. Good night, everyone. Godspeed. Until next time.
Good night.
Good night.
Man,